This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Football Friday here on Money Moves. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you live from downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Big show on deck. We'll get into some of the market reaction from the Packers win last night as week 2 of the NFL season is officially underway. A big college football weekend also got started last night and will carry over. But let's get this thing started like we always do. Producer Brian Ortega, time to run it down.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
All right, JVT, top items on deck as we head into the weekend, starting with some great guests. In 30 minutes, we'll get top plays from VSiN's own Will Hill. Then in hour 2, VSiN senior editor Zach Cohen stopping by with some NFL and college football, as well as Arash Markazi of the Sporting Tribune. In addition to all of our football talk tonight, big fight weekend coming up Saturday here in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I'm curious. You don't have to say yes if you're not. Are you going to watch the fight?
Oh,
no, you're working.
Okay,
let me rephrase this. If you weren't, would you?
Yes.
Because one of the things that I'm now down, especially with this new UFC model coming in. Like, I like mixed martial arts a little bit, actually a lot more than I do enjoy boxing. But the fact that this is now so much more accessible, I already have my Netflix sub. Let's go. I'll watch it. I'll throw it on. I'm excited. I cannot wait. So, yes, brain fart. You're going to be on the sideline for it. But I am very much looking forward to this fight. And I'm actually looking forward to, if boxing continues to do this, watching more fights.
Well, and I was going to say, it's been a while since I've watched just a pure boxing match.
Yep.
So I'm excited. There's name value. It's accessibility. It's all of that stuff. So that'll be fun to get into with Arash later on in hour 2 of the program. That, again, is happening right here at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. Why are you laughing?
Because I even threw you for a loop because I was like, are you going to watch it? You're like,
it's a little, little crossover. We will also get into
you stream it on your phone.
Our best bets of the weekend and cementing our contest selections. We are in Circa Millions, Circa Survivor. You've got the college football contest at the Westgate, so lots of finalization to happen today.
Yeah, put the college picks in this morning, and yes, we need to solidify. I think we're pretty close to solidifying our 5 in the millions, but we need to lock down today, and I'm going to press you on is what we're going to use for Survivor.
I'm nervous. I have a lot of anxiety. But let's, before we look forward, react to last night, Thursday night football. Last night at Lambeau Field, and as Bill Adee headlined the VSiN Daily newsletter this morning, the Pack is back. Green Bay
haven't heard that one.
Beats the Commanders 27-18, covers the 3.5. Total stays under any number, and the final score I don't even think was as indicative, as decisive a win as this was for Green Bay last night. Never in doubt, really, from the opening drive, it felt like.
It goes back to what we were talking about. Was it Monday or after Monday? I mean, these games are stupid. They're basketball. Watch the fourth quarter. The fact that statistically that was such a rear end whooping for the Green Bay Packers, and yet you look up in the fourth and you're like, oh, it's 17-10, and this could be something here if we're like, you got to kind of sit up. So, but Green Bay was really impressive, and I will give two-time owner of the Green Bay Packers, Brian Ortega, who did not wait the second he walked into the studio. I was going to offer this. I think I owe a mea culpa. I didn't think the Packers were going to be bad, but I have questioned whether or not Jordan Love was going to be particularly good. Putting the ball in danger is one of the things that I referenced quite a bit, especially from last year. My man's been slinging it for the first 2 weeks of the season. Now, there's a couple of throws and a couple of touchdowns that he left on the table that if he actually completes those, we're probably talking about a snoozer last night. But it's been pretty impressive to watch Love operate this offense, now healthy. And after what we saw from last year, this looks like, dare we say, the best team in the NFC North.
And they are being priced as such when you look in the market right now. Let's first go to Jordan Love, who you mentioned a great night, 19-31, 292 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. That extends his no interception streak, by the way, to 9 games now dating back to last season. He is the third shot on the board for MVP, was 20-1 preseason, 12-1 after week 1, now 7-1 behind only Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And as we go to the NFC here, standalone favorites, Green Bay is at 3-1 to win the NFC. They are minus 165 favorites to win the NFC North.
Yeah, and I think that's all pretty apt. And obviously, it has to do with what you've seen from this team, or where they're at. They've played a second game. They're 2-0 amongst some other teams. But the thing that really sticks out when you watch them is outside of Love, defensively, they seem legitimately strong. I mean, you had Micah Parsons and the quarter sack, and he got there with the half sack.
Which, by the way, sorry, real quickly, I'm glad that we mentioned a couple of times yesterday the difference between that prop being a quarter sack and a half sack, because different books do it differently, and that ended up coming into play with Parsons.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But just that, yesterday I had talked about Edgerrin Cooper and the fact that he had been one of these dudes that had been really taking a step forward. He, again, plays a large snap load. He comes out with 10 or 11 tackles and looks really strong there, even came away with half a sack as well. This front seven looks legitimately good. Almost every part of this team looks really strong. And I mentioned the best in the NFC North. Depending on whether or not the Eagles figure out what's going on with that second corner spot, you can make a pretty strong argument this team could be, after 2 weeks, the best team in the NFC.
No doubt about it. And again, they are the favorites in the NFC now all of a sudden. And I want to go a little bit deeper on this defense, because particularly against the run, how stout this group has been through 2 weeks now. So Washington last night trying to run the football, 19 carries for 51 yards. 2.7 yards per carry, and then pair that with what we saw against Detroit last week, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery coming at you. 22 carries for 46 yards. So in all, giving up less than 250 total yards both games. 2 wins over teams, mind you, as well, that were 12-plus win teams a season ago, that were both top 5 in the NFL last year in points per game. The Lions averaged 33.2 points per game, Commanders 28.5. They combined to score just 31 points on this team. That defense looks real. And if you are getting that play, to your point, out of Jordan Love throughout, and he stays healthy, and I know obviously the Jaden Reed injury is going to play a role in that, but they've got some other secondary guys like we were talking about with Brian coming in. Could a Matthew Golden start to rise? Is their best pass catcher just going to be Tucker Kraft because of what he's doing in the tight end room? Over 100 yards for him. He's had touchdowns back-to-back games. If this offense can operate at just a decent, if not elevated level, and have an elite defense behind them, they are a serious contender.
Absolutely. I was trying to find what's going to be interesting, and we'll see if I can grab the odds for it or if we can find them, because they are down now. I think they have a real shot at that last undefeated team. So they're 2-0 right now. You look at the way their schedule breaks down, depending on what you think of Cincinnati, who they get at home after their bye. You're looking at Cleveland, Dallas, Cincinnati, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Carolina, up until November 10th in Philadelphia. I don't think it would be astonishing if this team still has the O in their loss column by the time they get there. We'll see what happens with Cincinnati, but if we know they have their issues defensively, they look like they have a very strong path, a very likely path to being the last undefeated team, or at least having a very strong record through 8 games by the time they go take on the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday night.
Just out of curiosity, because one of my early thoughts watching this game was, okay, maybe did I downgrade the Lions too much coming out of week 1 after facing this team? Like, what if the Packers are just that good?
Yeah.
So then you've got the Lions taking on the Bears this week, and is that line getting out to 6 actually maybe a little bit more appropriate now based on what this team actually could be? I don't know, and maybe this is just more of a wait-and-see game than I initially thought after last night.
2 things to be true at once, though, right?
Sure.
Which is, hey, maybe the Lions are that bad, and maybe the Packers are this good. Maybe they both deserve to be altered in terms of their ranking coming off of that game. We will see if that's going to be the case, too, as we get a pretty good matchup between the Bears and the Lions on Sunday. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's binary one or the other. I think this could be one of those situations where we could have a scenario where both things are actually the truth.
And I mentioned 6. According to that graphic, at DraftKings, we're up to the 6.5 right now. A couple of other market movers, just to let you know. Parsons, his odds shortened in Defensive Player of the Year to plus 475. And we mentioned the MVP odds for Love. Jaden Daniels, Love is in that 3rd spot now. Daniels was in the 3rd spot. He's now 7th on the board at 12-1. I mentioned the Jaden Reed fractured collarbone. He's expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. But the big injury for Washington, Austin Eckler going down, looks like a season-ending Achilles. And they let Brian Robinson go to San Francisco because they felt so confident in that room and the depth they had. Well, that depth is being tested right out the gates now.
Yeah, that's and I thought, too, let me double-check this because I want to see if I have this down. There was a lot of, we come out of the preseason, offseason, and we talk about some of these hey, man, really excited for certain guys, their roles in some of these games, what it's going to look like. Bill, right?
Bill Krosky-Merritt.
Bill Krosky-Merritt still had, in totality, fewer snaps than Austin Eckler. So I was somewhat surprised because I thought this was supposed to be it. And so Eckler now getting injured, I'm going to be curious to see if Krosky-Merritt's going to get that full workload. One would assume that is the case. But we thought that coming out, this was going to be a larger workload. And for a couple of games now, it looked like that wasn't it. So now it seems from a fantasy standpoint, player prop standpoint, what some of the adjustments are going to be for Krosky Merritt now that Eckler's down. It's going to be one of the more interesting storylines going into week 3.
Yeah, and he was one of the most bet props yesterday over, depending the number, anywhere from 37.5 to 39.5 yards. Ended up just having 4 carries and 17 yards on the ground. Also last night in college football, JVT, I said if there was a bet I liked at NC State Wake Forest, it would have been the over because of how I rate NC State's defense. But so the total ends up going over. I'm sad I didn't bet it. Wake Forest was covering the plus 7.5 for 55 minutes of this game. Mm-hmm. Do not score in the second half. NC State kicks a late field goal, ends up winning the game by 10. But we were texting back and forth about NC State's defense. Maybe we're just needing to target overs on this team or team total overs on the other side, whatever it is, because that defense is brutal.
It was bad. I mean, so they give up it was the kickoff return for the touchdown, correct?
Yes.
right
They're down
away.
14-0 right away.
Yeah, and then you give up the 7-play, 93-yard drive. And when we talked about this game yesterday, we had referenced this we were talking about the Virginia game, where they had given up explosive plays, explosive runs, and that looked like it was going to be an issue for NC State. And you saw some of that. But in totality for Wake Forest, still the numbers don't really add up for them. Only 12 first downs in the game, 7.2 yards per pass, fewer than 3 yards per rush. So this was, there was quite a few of folks feeling really good about Wake Forest when they were up 14-0. You and I text, and then all of a sudden you blink, and NC State is driving away with this thing. So it was a pretty interesting affair, but I think you put a little pin in the fact that NC State defensively has had some really big black marks on their resume, and they go to Duke coming up next week.
Yeah, Wake outscored 17-0 in the second half of that one, and too bad there wasn't a yes-no prop on will there be a food truck fire. Because
what was
all
that?
Of the smoke coming up. Kudos to the cook inside the truck. Did you see it? He's got the extinguisher thing. I would have been out.
You just would have let the whole truck burn down?
Run away.
Get an idea of how you work in a panic.
Not great self-defense or whatever. What's the proper
Fight or flight?
Fight or flight.
You flight.
It ain't me. Coming up on Money Moves, JVT's taking us through his updated NFL market power ratings, and we'll have some more college football a little later. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We're rolling along on this Football Friday edition of Money Moves, VSiN, the sports betting network. He's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. You can't hit me with things that make me laugh right before we come on.
I didn't even do any. I don't know what.
I'm trying to be a professional, and you got me giggling. I hear the control room giggling.
I'm doing my job and looking up, metrics and statistics and breaking down EPA by formula. No, I'm not. But I wasn't really listening to you guys, and I just hear, what was it? Stars of Mormon what?
The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and then you guys were talking about Dancing with the Stars. And so then I snapped at you, and I was like, you get so mad at me about the Eurobasket stuff. How do you have time to watch these things?
I don't watch them.
Then how do you know?
I get TikTok updates.
That's ridiculous. I don't believe that at all.
I don't watch them.
You had legitimate excitement about Dancing with the Stars.
The only reality TV, because I like Topanga from Boy Meets World.
Who
doesn't?
I don't know who that is.
You are of my age range. There's no way you don't know Boy Meets World and Topanga.
I have not watched a second of Boy Meets World in my life.
Ay, caramba. Okay, on to bigger.
Secret Life of Alex Mack.
On to bigger, but potentially not better things. The NFL
Clarissa
market
explains
ratings.
It all. Is that? Yeah. How's that? It's a good reference.
Wow, that's a throwback.
Yeah. See?
I honestly that is a show that escaped my mind altogether.
There you go.
But look it up.
Look at that.
What a
Just
banger.
unlocked the memory.
Time to get into some NFL
Somebody's
week
gonna tweet,
2.
don't you watch that girl stuff? It was on when I was like 9. I have an older sister.
But that's why I don't get the Boy Meets World thing. Anyways, we got week 2 market power ratings that you put together. You really did do a lot of work on this, so I do want to give you your flowers. You do this each and every week. For someone who has not seen your market power ratings, can you give a brief explanation off the top?
Again, I will always shout out Jeff Fogel, former employee here, who does a great newsletter if you want to check that out too, but taught me how to do this many, many years ago. And I think it's a really fun, cool exercise. This is in basic format. It is what the betting market thinks of these teams. It's how it power rates these teams, and you derive them from the current betting market, where the lines are right now. I have been using 1.5 points for home field to find the difference in a neutral for these teams according to the betting market, and then you set the ratings up as such. So there's a couple of different ways to use this, and I think we have a really good example to use. Now, before the show started, I tried this example out on you, and it did look like your eyes were moving in a lot of different directions. So I hope I wasn't bloviating and saying a lot of different things. I was talking fast. But I think your team is a very good example of what we're looking at here, why we're going to use these. So let's throw these up really quickly. Again, basic power ranking or power rating standpoint, which is, hey, all right, difference between the two numbers. That's exactly what these teams would be on a neutral. So the quick example, Ravens would be a 2-point favorite over the Bills on a neutral, according to the market power ratings for this week. So let's direct your eyes, if you're watching up on YouTube TV, why wouldn't you be? Or VSiN.com, why wouldn't you be? Go to VSiN.com/subscribe, check it out.
And if you're not right now, go back later. You can always check it out on demand.
There we go. Promote. If you direct your eyes, and for our radio audience, I will describe it to you, the 49ers without Brock Purdy fall on the 78.5 line. Now, why this matters, and if we could keep this up, please, while I'm talking about this, why this matters is, again, the 49ers and the Saints are pairs this week. They're playing each other. The difference between the two on a neutral field, because the market is at 3, would be 4.5 because we're using 1.5 for home field. So you have to have a 4.5-point difference between these two. So in other words, if you wanted to move the 49ers up, that means you got to move the Saints up as well. And from a power rating standpoint, it would make no sense to have the Saints as equals with the Panthers, as equals, or 2 points or a point worse than the Giants. In fact, Storm, if you go back to last week, I had to upgrade the Saints because if I were to use the Saints at 72, which they were last week, clearly the worst team in the NFL, that would put the 49ers on that 76.5 line, which would make them worse than the Giants and the Titans, just a little bit better than the Panthers. And again, this is the 49ers without Brock Purdy. You can see the market downgrade here, and I think it's one that's very clearly, as I've kind of been making the case, I don't know, man. It seems like a pretty strong adjustment with what we've seen with this 49ers team to make them these short favorites on the road against New Orleans. And here we have a visual example of how far they have potentially fallen.
And so with that, does that mean you feel like you need to bet the 49ers this week? Because
yes,
the number is 3. Granted, it's on the road. But then even when you take some of the extraneous factors and like your personal opinion on Mac Jones, you don't feel like it's that significant of a
Correct.
downgrade from Brock Purdy. So that then impacts your opinion in a different way as well. So are you ultimately going to fire on the 49ers, or are we going to have them as a contest play?
Yeah, I think that they should. I don't want to put you through that, so I don't think we'll use it in the millions. But that'll be a side for me this coming weekend with the San Francisco 49ers. And this is really what it is. You use these market ratings, you have your own numbers, but that's essentially what you're doing all the time, right? You have your own ratings, you make your own numbers, you look in comparison with the market. This is just a different version of doing that when you're talking about making power ratings from the market, but it does give you a visual sense of where these teams stand. There's a couple of interesting dynamics that you thought that you were highlighting. Well, what do you got?
So I was going to say another one that we were talking about before we came on was where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sit, if you want to walk the audience through that.
All right, so Bucs are taking on the Texans Monday night. That is the first of the doubleheader. They are 2.5-point dogs. Simple math. 2.5 minus 1.5, that gives you 1. Texans are a point better according to the betting market if we're using 1.5 for home field this coming week. That, of course, is right here. You see it in the rankings if you would direct your eyes to the 82-83 mark right there. Texans are on the 83 line. Buccaneers are on the 82 line. There's a point difference. The reason why that matters is from our market power ratings last week, the Buccaneers actually rated out as a half-point better than the Houston Texans. So when you put this together, there's going to be some volatility. There's going to be a change from week to week. But this is where you find a little bit of the inconsistencies. We've discussed this. Now, what's going to be interesting is we see a couple of 2.5s out there shaded to the favorite side. So I wonder if this is going to get to 3. But this all leads me to something that we had discussed, which is I think the Bucs are the play. We can talk about the intricacies of the matchups, the fact that this offensive line for Houston isn't particularly great, the fact that the Bucs have a good interior presence that can go after a soft interior for an offensive line that's missing its center, all of these things. But from a number standpoint, I think these two teams are at worst equals with each other, which would put you at 1.5. Or I think you can make the argument the Bucs, they were rightly ranked last week in these power ratings where they were just slightly better than the Texans. And so to me, it would be the Buccaneers.
I would also say, and I like the 2.5. We talked about it yesterday. I even think that they can just win this game outright, plus 115 on the money line here. But I think if nothing else, this is a great teaser leg.
Yep.
Like bring that 2.5 up to the 8.5 in Houston in what we anticipate could be a lower scoring game with how good the Texans defense is. Total 42.5 in this one. I really like bringing that up.
Yeah. Can I point out one to you too as
Please.
well that's pretty interesting? How about the Chargers? Chargers, if you go back to last week, we know that the Chiefs were about 3-point favorites on a neutral field. So that was pretty simple. Chiefs were on the 86 line, Chargers on the 83 line. This week, Chargers and Chiefs, because of adjustments, are now together.
Same line.
Yep, they are now equals with one another. And in a vacuum, like, doesn't that make sense? If I were to ask you, hey, what were you going to do after last week if we thought that the Chargers were 3 points worse? Do you make them better than the Chiefs? Maybe not, especially with all the injuries and everything. But at the very least, they should be equals with one another. And sure enough, here we are, Chargers and Chiefs together. And you see that, too. The Chiefs are taking on the Eagles. You see the 2-point difference there. They're about 1 point favorites. The Eagles are on a neutral. That puts you at about 2.5. I was using 1 as the number I was calculating with, or excuse me, yeah. So, and we're floating around that range, right? Right now, Philly's like a 1 point favorite. They're a pick. So you're floating around that 2 point difference on a neutral between these two. So it's just a really good barometer. It's a good way to visualize what you're doing. Instead of just making numbers, you can compare and contrast with your own thoughts as opposed to just cranking out power ratings as well. But I think it's a fun thing to do, and it's fun to see where these teams fall. You know, another good upgrade, for example, last week, the Cleveland Browns. Browns were on the 75.5 mark, or excuse me, the 75.5 line. Mm-hmm. You know, from a power rating standpoint, I think they got upgraded to what, 78? Yeah, so like they've been upgraded. I think that makes some sense, right? After what we saw, probably should have won a game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and then their adversary from last week, the Cincinnati Bengals, who were initially on the 82 line. They don't really budge. They sit there at the 82, but you bring the Browns up. And they're a team, too, among some others. Colts got upgraded. They're at the 80.5 mark. Last week, the Colts were floating around equals with the Dolphins. And actually, no, they're the 78.5 line against the Dolphins. So I think it's a really good exercise, man. Again, we can just give some visualization to where we're at with some of these teams. And the question becomes, with some of them, you know, for New Orleans, to go back to the game we opened up with, should they be upgraded? Should some of these teams be where they're at? Should they be lowered? And if you have questions to those, then you act accordingly with some of the market lines that we're seeing.
Well, and I think it's just interesting, too, like looking at some teams in comparison to each other, even if they're not playing each other. Like, are the Bengals that much better than the Colts right now? Like, that, just based on at least like the 1 week sample size. A handful of these, though, go hand in hand of, is this team actually that much better than another? Sure.
I mean, the one too, we're talking about this. The Lions and the Chicago Bears. The Lions are getting bet up in the market right now. Do the Lions deserve to be rated as high? Now, it's only one data point, but after what we saw against the Green Bay Packers, because right now they're still in that 83.5, 84 line. If you see it right here, equals with the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Rams, still floating in that kind of direction. And I think you can make the argument that the gap between the two, the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions, probably should be a little bit tighter by my own measure.
Well, and that's why, but to your point, though, about like these market reactions, it is only a one data point sample size that we have 100%. At this point. So we need to see what that looks like more. And that's why I asked the question when we opened the show about now how good we see the Green Bay Packers are with against two opponents that last year were so great. Are we maybe with the Lions, did we move them down too much mentally after what we saw against Green Bay when Green Bay is actually just really good? But to your point, two things can be true, and we'll see how that plays out. We do have to take a timeout here, but remember, as you head into the weekend, Brocco has you covered. You can use the code VSiN to load up your account with a $50 deposit match up to $100. Then take advantage of monthly cashback style rewards that pay you whether you win or lose. Maximize your bankroll at Brocco. PlayBrocco.com today. Coming up on Money Moves, VSiN's own Will Hill joins the program why he thinks getting points in Sunday's Super Bowl rematch will happen. Take the over. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, Money Moves, and VSiN's exclusive betting splits cut through the noise, pulling real-time data straight from Circa and DraftKings Sportsbook. Circa caters to the sharp bettors and big wagers. DraftKings is going to reflect that more broad public perspective, giving you a unique look at both sides of the action, track the percentage of bets, and handle on every game across every major sport so you can make sharper, more informed bets. Start your edge today for just $9.99 at vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe. Stormy Buonantony and JVT with you. Speaking of those betting splits, looking at the Jets and Bills right now on DraftKings, while 31% of the bets are coming in on the Jets taking the points, 70% of the money. Wonder if any of that has to do with the news this morning that Bills defensive lineman Ed Oliver, who had a sack and forced fumble in week one, officially ruled out already for the game coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I think with him officially out, I grabbed 6.5, so I'll add it to the ledger for the New York Jets. Second straight week backing them, but I think that's, look, with Ed Oliver, your premier run-stopping threat along the defensive line, you still got gouged, and now you get this pretty threatening rushing attack that comes from that Ben Johnson tree where Justin Fields looked pretty threatening against the Pittsburgh Steelers overall. Breece Hall in this running game looked pretty good. And I don't know if this is a Bills team that is going to be amongst the best run defenses in the NFL. I think that bodes well for the Jets. So I think it's worth coming in with this news to grab 6.5. I don't think it'll move. But that was enough for me. So let's go Jets.
Yeah, Oliver, I guess, got stepped on, had his foot in a walking boot, and was rolling around on a scooter at practice yesterday. To talk through some more NFL sides, totals, best bets coming up this weekend. Excited to welcome in our good buddy Will Hill on the Progressive Guest Line, VSiN Primetime, the Shoulda Bet More podcast. You can download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Great guest today.
On X at Not The Will Hill. Yes, can confirm. And Will, let's get into it, because one game I know you have your eyes on is one of the biggest games of the week, the Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and Eagles. You think there's going to be points. Why?
I do, and good to see you guys. Thanks for having me. I like over 46.5. I thought watching both teams last week, the Chiefs and the Eagles, I thought both teams had major issues defending the pass. A lot of guys wide open, just running free in the secondary. Chiefs allowed 6.5 yards per play to the Chargers. Herbert, 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, only 9 incompletions, no picks. And it looked like when he dropped back to pass, he had his choice of guys to choose from. I don't think that Kansas City has been elite defensively since a couple years ago when they beat, and sorry to bring up painful memories, that year they beat the 49ers in overtime in Super Bowl. I thought they were really good defensively that year. I don't think they've been that here for a while. They're shaky against the pass. And Philly, their numbers were not bad in week 1, but you could tell it's not the same defense as last year. They've replaced a lot of guys. They've lost a lot of guys. And their stats would be much worse if CeeDee Lamb, who dropped basically 7-10 points worth of drops last week, if he could just catch a ball, those numbers are different. So you look at the 2 Super Bowls, it was 44-20. It was 38-35. I know that's, it's a few years ago, and there's some defensive scoring there to inflate that. But I just think, and I always give out Bills Chiefs over when those two teams play, because I think both teams go in, and I think it's similar here. Both teams go in saying, all right, we got to score. We've got an MVP candidate at quarterback. We maybe have a shaky defense. We got to be aggressive. We got to go for it on 4th down. And again, I don't really like either defense. I wish that I had my weapons. If I'm the Chiefs, no Rice. I don't think Worthy's going to play. I think it's more of a decoy, him at practice, but who knows? So to me, the 46.5 is pretty low. I think 47 there is a key number. I think this one goes over here. And as far as the side, kind of back and forth, I can't lay points, even if it's a point, singular 1.5 against Mahomes. It's hard to picture the Chiefs 0-2. I guess it's possible. It certainly is possible, but I like the over more than anything.
All right, let's go to another matchup. I'm laughing because I can't believe I'm about to say this sentence after watching this last week of football. What do you make of the Falcons taking on NFC Offensive Player of the Year, of the week, J.J. McCarthy?
No, I think you had it right the first time. Offensive Player of the Year, MVP. So you just keep going.
Freudian.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Look, I like the Falcons here. I think that if you froze time at the end of the 3rd quarter, I would think we're looking at like a 1 or a 2 point line. Obviously, you got to include the 4th quarter. You can't dirty the data and take out things that happen. But they were very conservative with McCarthy. And if you just look at Minnesota since the beginning of last year, and it's hard to believe, 15-3 in the regular season, that's really remarkable. But that being said, 9 of those 15 wins are by 1 score. They really don't blow you out. It's a lot of field goal wins. The 3.5 to me is obviously a very key number. And one of their blowout wins last year was against Atlanta. But if you dive deeper into that stat sheet, Atlanta had over 7 yards per play. Atlanta had 500 yards of offense. It was 42-21, but Atlanta was -3 in turnovers. That game just got away from them. That was at the point where Cousins started to unravel, started to kind of decay. They moved the ball up and down the field. So I think Atlanta could have easily won last week against Tampa. They dropped some interceptions. There's some 4th down stuff. Minnesota could have easily lost. And our buddy Steve Fezzik, who comes on this network a lot, has talked about this too. The angle of 0-1 teams against 1-0 teams. You're hungrier. You need it more. Throw in the fact that you're getting points. I think Atlanta's the right side here.
And, Will, you did get some good news for the Falcons, too. Drake London and Darnell Mooney, no injury designations for Sunday, so both will play there as well. You were also looking at this Titans-Rams game. Both kind of had a little bit weird Week 1 openers. So where are you ultimately placing your money coming up on Sunday?
Yes, as people who listen to this network know, I have a very toxic relationship with the Tennessee Titans, and that toxic relationship is going to continue this week. I'm taking them again. They killed me last year. I kept betting them. I just think they come into this year inherently underrated, because what killed them last year was Levis and horrible special teams. Special teams, that can be year to year. That can, you figure, get better. And Ward looked okay. That was a tough assignment in Denver. the elevation, really good defense. He was okay. He had his moments. I think that the coach didn't help him out. Drops didn't help him out. I think he'll be more comfortable at home. We'll see how Stafford holds up here after missing the preseason, a week after getting beat up and hit a little bit from the Texans. I just think 5.5 is a little bit high. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be low scoring, kind of points in a premium type of game. 20-17, that kind of game. I think that 5.5 is a lot here. So I will once again, unfortunately, go back to the well and be betting the Tennessee Titans. Famous last words for me.
All right. Stormy brought this up the other day, and I think the general premise is right. I just don't know if the time is right, but you're on the same page. Jackson Dart to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I think his time is coming sooner rather than later. Maybe it's next week. Who knows? Maybe it's 21-0 Cowboys at half, and we see him in the second half, and who knows? I just think bet this before the announcement is made, because I think even just the announcement of, Dart's going to start next week as quarterback, I think that moves the number and moves it pretty significantly. So I'm just trying to get ahead of that. He's a quarterback. This award is biased towards quarterbacks. He plays for the New York Giants. That matters. The market matters. We've seen this. Remember, I'm sure you remember JVT Thibodeau a few years ago in the NBA for Coach of the Year. It was a close race. He got it. Brian Dable won a close race a few years ago. I do think it helps to be in the New York market. And I just think right position, right market, get ahead of the number. It's not like Ward was great last week. Genty didn't do a ton. It's a pretty wide open Rookie of the Year race. So I just think get ahead of the number. It's going to be Dart's team sooner rather than later, we would think here, barring some resurgence from Wilson. So I just think that's the angle with it.
Yeah, to add to that, two of them. First off, Thibodeau won that. He had more second-place votes, or he didn't have as many first-place votes, but had more second-place votes than Monty Williams, and he won that. The other, to Will's point, Stormy, when Paul Skeens, before he got called up to an NL Rookie of the Year, was 30-1, and then he got called up. Didn't pitch a single pitch in Major League Baseball, and those odds got cut in half the second he got called up.
No, it's a good point by you, because if this ends up being the end of the rope for Russell Wilson, you think he comes in sooner rather than later. If it's that bad and the offensive line doesn't appear to be getting much better. Andrew Thomas, by the way, still listed as doubtful for Sunday. That coming out about 10 minutes ago from Mike Garafolo. Keep that in mind. And again, 22-1, a good price on Jackson Dart right now. Last couple minutes, let's go to college football, because we all know about Diego Pavia as a dog and the success he has had. You were rolling with taking the points at South Carolina too?
Yeah, I wrote this up for Fox Sports on Tuesday when it was 5.5. I think we're down to mostly threes. I still think it's the right side. Very rarely this early in the season do you have a common data point when these teams have only played a couple games, and that's a dangerous game to play as a bettor, as we know. But both these teams, Vandy and South Carolina, both played Virginia Tech. Vandy beat the hell out of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech team I actually liked last week. They outgained them by 230 or so yards at Virginia Tech and won the second half 34-0. Meanwhile, South Carolina on a neutral field against Virginia Tech played a game, at least in the stat sheets, that was kind of a coin flip. They got outgained. I know they had a punt return and kind of pulled away late, but I love this South Carolina team last year, but a big reason I loved them was their defense. And that defense lost 3 of the top 49 draft picks. They lost 5 guys to the NFL total. I don't think it's the same South Carolina team. I think they're a little bit overhyped. So I will take Vandy and Diego here, who's just been an underdog bettor's dream. Like you said, 8-2 against the spread, 4-0 on the road as a dog, a bunch of outright upsets. So even though the number is moved here, I would only look towards Vandy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't really. No, I was just, there's not enough time. I was going to ask about baseball. I got lost. It's okay.
You want to spit out a play for baseball real quick? 30 seconds. Go.
Under 7.5 DeGrom against the Mets. Wouldn't it be fitting DeGrom to pitch in a 1-0 game in that building where he's pitching like 1,000,000 2-1 1-0 games? That will be fun with all of the football going on. I had kind of lost track of the fact that's a huge series too. Mets and Rangers. DeGrom back at Citi Field. That'll be fun to watch tonight.
I think it's more fitting if he loses 1-0.
It's absolutely.
Nailed it, Will. Thank you as always. Will Hill, everybody. Follow him on X at @NotTheWillHill. Check him out. Live Bet Saturday coming up this weekend as well. Coming up after the break, we wrap up hour 1 going game by game through the NFL slate. You might be surprised to learn what the most lopsided game of the week is so far. I know I was. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you haven't already, time to get down with First Bet, the official horse racing partner of VSiN, built for bettors who demand more. First Bet isn't just about placing a wager, it's about helping bettors of all levels with proprietary AI handicapping tools that provide data-driven insights to help you make more informed bets. First Bet's in-app tools give you win, place, or show probabilities for each runner. You can quickly and easily identify good value plays and improve your ROI. Right now, you can take advantage of their limited time $250 sign-up offer. To claim your bonus, use our promo code VSiN250. That's VSIN 250 when you sign up in the First Bet app or at firstbet.com. That's the number one, stbet.com, and promo code VSiN250. Alongside Jonathan Von Tobel, Stormy Buonantony with you back here on this Football Friday edition of Money Moves. And I had the tease at the end of last segment talking about the most lopsided in terms of handle team that is being bet this week. And I was very surprised by it. Ben Fox over at Yahoo, posts a lot of this sportsbook data every day, every week. 87% of the money, the most bet side, the Patriots, plus the points at Miami. Does that not surprise you? Does that not surprise you, though, really?
No. I mean, I guess the degree to which, 87%, if that's an accurate number. But we talked about Miami's injuries and how bad it's gone for them and how it looks like it's falling apart. I guess I'll say, yes, it's surprising that they are number one because it's like with the dot, right? Like they're clearly number one.
Yes.
So I guess the degree to which they are bet, but I don't think it's stunning that maybe they would find their way near the top of this list. But go ahead.
So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that people want to fade Miami based on how they looked last week and the injuries, to your point. But knowing what you have told me about how closely you watched that Raiders-Patriots game and how terrible you thought New England played, that then we want to go.
I feel I want to pause you for a second. I feel like every time you bring up how closely I watched this game, my analysis of it has gotten more extreme, every time you brought it up. The first time you're like, oh, you told me they were bad. And now we've reached, you thought they were terrible. Terrible. They were good.
It was bad.
Yes.
It was bad.
Well, to your point, to add to what you're saying here, I don't think Christian Gonzalez is playing for New England. So, that's going to be something that's worth looking at potentially. Look, this is one where we'll have best bets later. I think the Patriots are a perfectly fine teaser leg. This doesn't look like it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game. But also to express some shock, I think historically, early season Miami games have not gone well for the New England Patriots. So that's going to be something with that sun beaten down. We know how these, early season Miami is akin to early season Denver, and that when you played those games, you were a little bit behind the eight ball. Denver because of the inherent home field of playing in thin air. Miami because of the heat that teams maybe aren't used to playing football in. So that's also somewhat surprising as well that there would be in a game that's not really been on a key number at all. Not really. It hasn't been. It should be sitting at 1.5 this whole time. It does. Your shock is warranted, I think.
The other most lopsided games, again, this is all by handle specifically from BetMGM data, but 83% of the handle on the Eagles in that Super Bowl rematch at Kansas City, 79% of handle on the Falcons at Minnesota, 77% laying the points with the Lions against the Bears, and 76% with the Cardinals, who are laying that 6.5 against the Carolina Panthers. So those are the most lopsided handle percentages going into week 2.
Shocking.
Any of those surprise you?
I'm surprised Arizona.
I'm just really surprised that the Patriots were the most lopsided.
You meant, what's the number for Arizona?
6.5.
No, I mean the percentage. The 70. Yeah, that does surprise me a little bit. I mean, I understand the Carolina Panthers didn't really look great, but it's not like the Cardinals rolled in there and just beat the crap out of the Saints and left. That was not exactly a stellar performance for Arizona when you looked at what they did statistically, giving up the 4 red zone drives to the New Orleans Saints. The fact that they had more first downs than New Orleans did, that technically they outgained them on a yards per play basis, outgained them in total yards as well. That's not a team that I watched. And then this week was like, let's lay 6.5, baby, I'm in. That's not exactly a team that I'm confident in.
Interestingly enough, I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about the Lions and Cardinals for Survivor as much as I thought that I would this week. We talked about with Arizona specifically, we wanted to use them last week because there were going to be limited opportunities to use them, and we do have a slightly higher rating on the Carolina Panthers than others. Didn't want to use them in week 2, but after how Carolina performed, I thought that I would hear more about Arizona this week, but I feel like that hasn't been as popular in talking to most people, which I think is a good conversation for us now as we want to kind of figure out and cement what we want to do with Survivor. The Ravens, yes, we know do play on Thanksgiving, but they are the biggest favorite of the week. Taking on a division opponent, though, in the Browns, who just went toe-to-toe with the Bengals. So it depends on how you evaluate Cleveland, really, if you want to go with the Baltimore Ravens. But I feel like both of us are pretty like-minded that Baltimore's going to win that game.
They should win that game.
And, well, yes, they should.
Yes.
They should.
Yeah, they
God,
should.
Let's not have that go around.
I'm sure there was a lot of they're going to win this game when they were up 15 with 5 minutes left or whatever it was.
Yep, and for the people that were laying that point and a half.
Yeah.
Not feeling great. But I think Baltimore is one that we've gone back and forth on a lot. The Rams were also a team that perked my ears a little bit against the Titans, but I don't know if I can get there. And then you know how high I am on the Dallas Cowboys this week as well against the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, I've not really been like too high on the Rams selection for the most part in using them on the road against what I think is a little bit of an underrated defensive team in Tennessee. Because let's roll with the premise that I'm wrong about Bo Nix, and I think that there was some fraudulence in his performance last year, and then we get that Week 1 performance, and there's a point of evidence to my case. But what if Tennessee's just an above-average defensive team? Now you're playing back at home after the game against Denver. It's not the best situation overall for L.A. I think the argument to use them here is, okay, if you're not going to use them here, where else would you use them? I would circle Week 9. Again, it's not like the pure fate of New Orleans, but you do, coming off of a bye, get to play host to New Orleans. That's going to be something that I think is a more beneficial spot to save L.A. for than using them here in a road game against a team that I think has the potential, if things go right for them down the stretch of the season, could find themselves in the throes of a divisional race.
I think you're right on that, and I do, to Will Hill's point earlier in the program, which, by the way, if you missed any of the show, you can always download Money Moves wherever you get your podcast, listen to that conversation. But how Matt Stafford bounces back after his first game, getting tossed around, didn't play at all during the preseason, didn't practice hardly at all either. What he is like physically, Week 2, on the road with the long travel, all of that stuff. So, okay, maybe we crossed that one out. So are you in agreement with me that Dallas feels like the right side in that Giants game?
Yeah, I think your top two choices in no particular order, I'll go alphabetical order again, are Baltimore and Dallas.
Okay.
To consider for using Survivor. We mentioned the metric for the scripted plays and expected points added in those plays. I showed you the graphic. Our boy Schottenheimer was up there as the number one team and number one coach in terms of scripted plays, expected points added. So he is going to be, I think, a team worth looking at. They were actually kind of up there, too, in terms of expected points added on non-scripted drives. And I think that's where Dak Prescott comes in and really helps out. I think my worry here, from a matchup standpoint, you're at home, so that does help. What does this offensive line look like against a very good defensive line? Are we going to be watching this game and find them in a low-scoring slugfest because that entire defensive line? Remember, on Monday we talked about that game against Washington, and the one thing that stuck out when we had brought it up was of the top 5 graded defenders by PFF metrics, 4 of them were defensive linemen for the New York Giants. This is a group that can really get after it, and it's still a relatively fresh offensive line that has been put together for Dallas that we don't know too much about. And by the way, the one test they were going to get, Jalen Carter got kicked out of the game before it started, and we don't really know what his impact was in that game. That would be my trepidation with using Dallas. But if you were to say right now, John, I want it, I'm like, all right, fine.
No, I guess just my counterpoint to that would be, let's say that is the case. Is the Giants offense still going to be able to score enough points to beat you?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the other part, right? You love Jackson Dart. What if he gets in this game?
I don't think he does.
Okay.
And so that's what, I feel like if they were going to put Jackson Dart into a game, they would want to give him the full week of prep knowing he's the starter and put him in. I don't think they're going to throw him in, especially behind an offensive line that is still going to be without Andrew Thomas for another week. Just face your fate here this week. And if you do ultimately want to pull the trigger and bring in Jackson Dart, you give him a full week of prep.
Sure.
So that's my thought process, at least on that.
Okay, my other question for you would be then, is there any other option for Dallas to use them? Probably not. The only one you could really make a case for is if the Bears get absolutely smoked this week and they're just awful, you go to Chicago next week, and then, I don't know, maybe at Carolina if they're awful in week 6, but I don't think that you'd be jumping at the gun to use the Cowboys in those situations, depending on how the week works out. Well,
and the Cowboys, they too play on Thanksgiving and holidays, but I don't want to take them against the Chiefs potentially, right? But Dallas this week at home too. They've been so good historically in this matchup, 15-1 outright against the Giants since 2017. Cowboys tend to beat up on bad teams. They play better at home. A lot of things drew me toward Dallas. So Dallas and Baltimore is the toss-up right now, and maybe we'll cement our decision later on in the show because we still need to. I hate this. This is going to be every week. This is going to be every. Or
I think Ortega.
Hopefully
Ortega. I was going to say, hopefully it is. Ortega texted us on Sunday, something along the lines of like, "You survived," and I just said that wasn't fun.
No,
it wasn't worth it.
It wasn't. You feel physically ill. Who wants that?
We could still technically our entry is now worth $1,032. We could sell it and split the profit.
There we go. Nailed it. Like nice $16 a piece. Okay, we got to step aside when we come back. Kicking off hour 2 here on Money Moves. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get into a little college football after this.